What's up, guys? Coach Matt here, Coach Omar, and we wanted to talk to you briefly, hopefully briefly, we'll be as brief as we can, some simple things to avoid back injuries in jiu-jitsu, spinal injuries. I'm not a doctor, he's not a doctor, we really don't know jack shit, but I've been doing it about 20 years, and there's some things that all my doctors that have patched me back together have told me some of these things. If I say them wrong, then I'm not a doctor. You're at your own risk. Go see your own doctor. I'm not a doctor. He's not a doctor. Blah blah blah. So don't do this at home. One of the big things that I've seen in jiu-jitsu is I should have had my little slinky, but your spine is kind of like a slinky, right? It's got all these. Your chiropractor, whoever will tell you, there's all these little rings kind of stacked on top of each other. So it's like a column, and when that column is in a straight line, like if my fingers are straight, for example, you can see that they can support a certain amount of weight. But when they start to get an angle and the pressure comes down, you see how that's going to like damage that. That's my best example. If you think about a slinky, right? You stack that slinky up, you can stack something on top of it, but as soon as you open it and the angles, it's going to bend. And that's what happens with our spine. Our spine is, right, like you've seen guys who can power lift 1,000 pounds. They can put that weight on their back, and they can put it right here on their shoulders, and they can go down, boom, here. So how is it possible that a person can retrain themselves to squat, 300, 400, 1,000 pounds, but, for example, I hurt myself, Coach Omar lays here, head towards coach. I've hurt myself doing this. I've been right here, the guy's grabbing his biceps or whatever, it doesn't matter, and I went like this, and hurt my back right just there, just like that. So what happened, if you think about my spine, even as strong as I was probably lifting weights at the time in decent shape, but what happened? When I bent, my spine is like that slinky, right? It's taking those columns are bending like this, and all of a sudden I'm putting pressure, I'm pulling, and I'm in that extended position. My spine is basically, if you think about those rings stacked on top, those rings start to go in this position. Now they're open and the pressure's damaging your spine. Right? Seems very simple. You might be like, hey coach, I've done that armbar 117,000 times and I never hurt my back. Me neither until the one time I did. So what I'm saying is anytime that I do that, my spine rounds. Even if I'm doing it to get like tight on the armbar, if I'm rounding my back and then I try to extend my spine under pressure, I'm causing an injury. Maybe not. I know you guys that are young and healthy can do it. But that's a good way to avoid it. So what would I do instead? I would try to keep my arms through here. Keep your strong grip, coach. Strong grip. I would try to keep my spine in straight the whole time. And then my spine is staying in a solid block, and I'm using my body mechanics, for example. Right? I'm not extending from the spine, I'm extending from the hip. Right? Whether I'm trying to keep my spine basically in a straight line and go from the hip kind of. The easiest for me, the one I do, is I just keep my spine here and I extend my leg. So I don't want to use my spinal extension to submit somebody. I'd rather use my hips. I want to be my spine is kind of straight, and I'm using more of the hip pressure than I am of crunching my spine. The other thing that happens is when we rotate, right? If anytime, let's say coach is passing my guard on the feet, and let's say he's like leg dragging to this side, right there, freeze. And you see my hips are turned this way, but he's passing, so I turn my body. You see how I'm taking those stacks and I'm twisting them out of position. I'm taking that spinal column and I'm twisting it. And now if I start to put muscular effort on this side, trying to push coach around or heave myself back into position, I'm fighting in a weakened position. So, what is the option? You try to develop techniques where you keep your spine in alignment. For example, if coach is dragging my legs to one side, I keep my spine in alignment, right? Maybe I can sit up here, he's supposed to pass my guard. Maybe I can frame here. Maybe I can, but I want my, on this side, there we go. Whatever frame, whether I'm using the gi here, whether I'm using a frame, collar tie, I want my spine in the same line. I don't want to be fighting like this. Anytime that I do that, same thing if I invert, right? If I'm inverted here and I'm trying to I don't know if I can do it today, I'm sore, but, right? Anytime that I'm here, look, and I start to twist my body, you gotta be careful, right? Because if I'm putting this way and then go pass over there, coach, and then I start to like twist, again, I'm doing that same thing, right? So sometimes you just have to give up position, honestly. You have to know your body. You have to think about, is it better if I train really hard in this one sparring session with my friends? You know, we're here at the school training, and you just gotta pay attention. Anytime you're twisting and fighting, putting a lot of load on that spine, anytime your spine is flexed and you're putting a lot of load, or you're hyperextended and putting a lot of load, you wanna have yourself in what they call roughly a neutral type of position. And that's where your spine is stacked on top of itself. So, in my opinion, it's worth it to give up position in training all the time, like 5 years, 10 years, all the time. And then talk to your coach, talk to your training partners and say, hey, what's a technique I can develop in good posture, right? That will allow me to counter this versus pure hustle. I'm not saying it's wrong to hustle. I know when you're in the finals, you're in the match, you gotta hustle, you gotta win. I get it. But in the day-to-day training, we have to find those ways where we can keep our body. We want our body, this block here from hip to here. We want this whole section like a solid block. You want to be in a chunk. You don't want your spine to be twisted this way or flexed or extended or twisted. When you start putting pressure through that system, again, you may get away with it 100 times, but over time, depending on how old you are and how much mileage you've got, over time you will damage your spine. That's it.